Good morning, Father's House friends and family. Thank you once again for joining us on our Sunday morning service. As you know, this is Communion Sunday, so get your elements, take them with your family. We're going to be taking ours in church and sharing some hamburgers and hot dogs afterwards. So if you want to come and be a part of that, we'd love to have you join us. It's December already. Can you believe that? So we're going to have our Christmas celebration on December 19th. We're going to do it before Christmas, a week before, so that everybody has the time to spend with their family for the holidays. So we'd love to have you be a part of that. Again, it's December 19th. Our men's group is still meeting at 6:30 on Monday nights on Zoom. If you want to be a part of that and go through the book of Romans for the next 3 years, go ahead and let Pastor Carl or Pastor Carlos know, and I'm sure they'd love to have you join them. Our ladies group is meeting on Zoom at 6:30 on Thursday nights. If you want to be a part of that, we'd love to have you join us. Let Deanne, Paradise, or myself know, and we'll get you hooked up on that. This week we're going to be studying about Elizabeth, who is John the Baptist's mother. This week is just our regular tithes and offerings. You know the drill. You can go to thefathershouse.org, click on the giving button, set up as a one-time gift, as a recurring gift. You can give to our missions that way or to our stage remodel. Just to be very clear, if you're giving online, when you go to the giving button and it says tithes and offerings, there's a drop-down arrow on that line where it will take you to give to the missions. You can give to India, Argentina, or if you're wanting to give specifically to the stage remodel, it's called stage remodel. I noticed a lot of people were starting to up their giving, and I think that might be why. So if you want to give to the stage remodel, please be very clear about that. You can mail a check to the Father's House at 133 Bernal Road, San Jose, California, 95119. Or if you live in the close area and you would like Pastor Carl and I to come by and pick up a check or cash or money order, we'd be happy to do that too. So that's really all I have to cover today. So we'll turn the time over to Pastor Carl. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Father's House. Good to be here again and spend this time with you. Well, the cold weather's starting to hit it a little bit these last couple of days. It was like, what was it? Thursday, it was beautiful out, and Friday, it's like winter hit. So here we are with a little bit colder than what it's been. Not that any of us can really complain because we're not really into winter, we're into fall. So it's pretty nice when you're into December and your leaves are still really, for the most part, haven't fallen yet. We still probably have 50% of those to go. So that's one of the benefits of living here in Northern California. And in especially, I probably think in the South Bay, where it's a little bit warmer than, well, not in all the Bay Area, but in many of those places. So we get to enjoy some pretty good weather. But anyway, that's a lot of fun because we don't get those winters with 3 feet of snow like other people get. Anyway, concerning the men's ministry, Penny is right. That's been going on, but not for 3 years. She's a little bit given to exaggeration. But we're probably into our second year, but we're getting ready to wrap it up real quick, probably another 2 months, and we'll be done with it. So you can still catch in the book of Romans if you want to be a part of the men's ministry. I won't say anything about the women's ministry since she picked on the men. I'll let that lie because the one thing I need is Mama not to be happy, because if Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And so I want to be happy. Anyway, with that said, I thought we would just kind of go into talking about as we're heading towards Christmas. This being Communion Sunday again, I want to talk a little bit more today about this idea that we've been talking about, the hidden heart of Jesus, and how he expresses this heart and what we can learn about God through the life of Jesus, but also what our response sometimes should be to that. Last week we took somewhat of a break because we were talking about Thanksgiving, and we talked about that great praise that we found in Psalms, which was a liturgical praise. As a matter of fact, on Sunday morning at the Father's House, we actually did the liturgical participation in that psalm of praise and thanksgiving. And so I kind of want to continue because it's Communion Sunday today. I want to continue with the idea of Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving really plays into communion. Now you think about it, when we talk about we're taking the elements, we call them the Eucharist, right? When we're talking about the Eucharist, which is our communion serving, or what, as Penny would call them, the elements. That whole word Eucharist centers around and comes from the word of that connotes or means to give thanks or a thankfulness or gratitude to some extent. So I thought it was probably appropriate to talk about in light of the fact that last week was Thanksgiving. We're moving into Christmas. And it seems like in the season that we're in, and after a long stint of coming up on 2 years dealing with COVID-19 and the racial unrest and social unrest that's going on in our country, that it seems that we can kind of find ourselves down right now, can't we? We can kind of find ourselves in a downward trend in our own lives. We don't have as much money as we had with inflation, all those different things that come into play. And I've been thinking about it and thinking about this fog that is there in our mind because of this. And I think that sometimes what saves us or what we find that brings us healing is when we have a proper attitude towards what's happening in our life and a proper attitude, really, in some cases, to God. So I think I want to talk about that today. And I want to talk about the idea that when we're thankful, when we're really thankful for what we have and we get our eyes off of what we don't have or what we wish we had, that there's such a change in our mind that our life goes on better and that we find that everything that we do during the day is better. Let me give you an example of that to start with. Just thinking about it. If you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is you turn on the TV and you look at all of the bad news that's on TV, I want to ask you a simple question. How does the rest of your day go when you do that? Secondly, if you get up in the morning, you spend just a little bit of time in prayer, reflection on God, maybe thanking Him, praying the Lord's Prayer, whatever it is that you do by way of daily devotion. How does that set the tone for the rest of your day? I would think that in those two instances, that the way that you tackle your day is going to come from two different mindsets that you have going into that day. And so you're going to tackle that day or move into that day with whatever that mindset is that starts that day. And what we find at the end of the day, maybe what we find is the way we started and the way we finished or how we finished has everything to do with the way that we started. The reason I want to talk about thankfulness a little bit more is because I think when we're thankful, both in our mind and in our words, well, I guess three ways, in our mind, in our words, and in our actions, I think that it sets a trend that's positive for us to go forward in our life on a daily basis. I think that people that are not thankful tend to be less happy, don't they? Less content, less at peace. I don't know, less anxious or a little more anxious than those that find themselves being thankful in a very situation that they're in. Sometimes we can't change the situation that we're in, but we can change our mind about the situation that we're in. And that's when we transcend our situation because we see it from a different perspective. So I want to tell a little story again out of the life of Jesus, something that happened to him and also happened to 10 others that is very significant that happened to them through this person of Jesus. And we're really going to kind of talk about two things. We're going to talk about the mercy of God that we find in Jesus, this idea of mercy, and we're going to find whether or not people really are thankful for the mercy that God extends them in the midst of their circumstance or not, and what the difference is. So we're going to pick up the story, and we're going to pick it up in Luke chapter 17. It's a short story, and if you want to go to your Bible, you can. If not, if you just listen to it, you'll get the gist of the story. It picks up in verse 11 of Luke chapter 17, and it reads as follows. While he's on the way to Jerusalem, he was passing between Samaria and Galilee. Now remember, Samaria is that in between the two parts of Israel, in the middle area, was part of Israel. But that there was, in that people, they weren't really churchgoers. They weren't temple goers, I guess you would really call it today. They weren't pure Jews because they were really kind of a part that was taken into captivity, and there was a lot of intermingling of other faith traditions. And so they weren't really purely Jewish in the full 100% sense. They were more like a mixed nationality of different nations and different tribes and different tongues, but they still had Jewish blood in them. So they were really kind of disdained by the people, and the people really shunned them, and they didn't even really worship together. As a matter of fact, the Jew didn't even want to talk to a Samaritan because they considered them as dogs to some extent. Well, in the midst of this, as Jesus is traveling from northern Israel down south to Jerusalem, what's happening is he's going through this region called Samaria. And it says, and when he entered a village, 10 leprous men who stood at a distance met him. And they raised their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said to them, Go and show yourselves to the priest. And as they were going, they were cleansed. Now one of them, when he saw that he had been healed, turned back, glorifying God with a loud voice. And he fell on his face at his feet, giving thanks to him. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered and said, Were there not 10 cleansed? Sorry, but I can't read that word because I got it in there. But the 9, I said it was 9. But the 9, where are they? No one found, was none. I'm going to read that again. I've got this thing so marked up that I can't even read it because I've got so many marks on it. So I'm going to go back again. And it says, Now one of them, when he saw that he had been healed, turned back, glorifying God with a loud voice. And he fell on his face at his feet, giving thanks to him. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered and said, Were there not 10 cleansed? But the 9, where are they? Was no one found who returned to give glory to God except this foreigner? And Jesus said to him, Stand up and go. Your faith has made you well. That's an interesting text in many ways because we've got 3 things happening there, really. We have Jesus and his extension of mercy that we'll talk about for a moment. And then we've got these 10 lepers that are healed, and basically they have 2 different destinies, so to speak. So the ironic thing about when you were a leper, and you were a leper during these times that there was no cure for leprosy. The only real cure for leprosy was when you died from it. There was no cure. So the fact that Jesus cleansed them of leprosy was a miracle in themselves. Now these 10 that were outside the city had probably heard of the miracles that Jesus had done. They were very aware that he had done it. And so when they heard that Jesus was coming that way, they probably thought that they would, because they would have all lived together outside of the community because they were marginalized and cast out. And because they knew that Jesus was coming, they knew that if they had any hope at all, their last hope was going to be in Jesus Christ. Well, they probably saw Jesus coming from a distance. As they saw him coming from the distance, they all rose up together and they looked out and they began to cry. You can almost imagine that they're crying to him from a distance, Jesus, have mercy on me. Jesus, have mercy on me. Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me. And as Jesus gets closer, he hears the chants of these 10 men that are on the hill, and they're asking for God to have mercy upon them. Now, they really wanted to have mercy upon them because the state that they were in was a hideous state. As a matter of fact, if you've ever seen anybody with advanced leprosy before they die, eventually their limbs start falling off. And then maybe first a finger, and then fingers, and then parts of their hand, and parts of their toes, and parts of their feet. And it's a very painful and it's a very slow death for these lepers. And that's why it was so hideous. That's why they were cast out. Because they were at a distance, or the reason they were at the distance, because they were not allowed to get within 100 paces of anybody because the disease was so contagious. And yet they cried out, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me. It's a pretty interesting thing to think that God, when he hears somebody crying out and asking for mercy, the fact that Jesus heard their cry. I guess the most important thing about it was Jesus didn't just ignore them. He didn't walk away from them. He didn't go into the city and acted like nothing could be done. He simply turned to them and he gave them a command. I want you to go to the priest and I want you to present yourselves there as being cleansed. Now that's a big story. There's a lot going on there. But for the sake of time, I don't really want to dwell on that as far as what that means and the miracle in that in itself of going to the temple and to showing themselves to the priest. Because for that then, there was a sacrifice that was given because you had been cleansed of leprosy. But you see, this was the first time that anybody since the law of Moses had ever been cleansed from leprosy and presented before the priests. Well, with that in mind, and that's kind of the side story behind that, They start running to go and to meet the priest. And as they're running, and while they're in the motion of going to the priest, what happens is they begin to recognize that the leprosy is falling off their skin, that their healing is ensuing. Maybe the closer they got to the priest, the more they were healed, until before they even got there, they looked down upon themselves and saw that they were completely cleansed of leprosy. Well, here's kind of where the story gets interesting. Here's where the rub is. It says in the story that one of the men was a foreigner and that he was a Samaritan. The assumption is, at least by scholars, and probably or could be true, is the other 9 were Jewish people. They were the very people of the household of faith. They were the very people that Jesus presented him to and came from because they were the Jews. It would almost be like saying these were the people that were church members, is really what it's like. And this Samaritan was the one that the church members wanted nothing to do with, and he wanted nothing to do with the church members. Like, yeah, I don't really like you, and you don't like me. We're lepers. We've got to live together. We've got to coexist. But if you took them outside of their leprosy, they wouldn't be likely ones to hang out together. Now, the difference is that those that were inside the community of the Jews, as they were going to present themselves to the priest, they got healed and they continued on their journey once they were healed. But this Samaritan, when he looked down, maybe he thought, what's the priest really going to do for me? I'm not a part of that household of faith. I'm not a Jew. They're not even going to accept me the same way that Jesus would accept me. And rather than going all the way to the priest, I guess maybe what he decided is, no, I think I'm going to go to the high priest and show him what he did for me. I'm going to present myself before the high priest. And as he was going, and as he watched, stopping for a minute, he watched the other 9 fade over the horizon. He turned back and he saw Jesus, looking at his skin and looking at Jesus from afar. He decided there was only one place that he could be. There was only one place that he wanted to be. That he wanted to be at the feet of Jesus, worshiping him and giving him thanks. So then, rather than running on, he turned around and he ran to Jesus. And as he ran to Jesus, he fell at Jesus' feet, probably weeping and sobbing. But the greatest thing that he did was he thanked Jesus for what had happened. He thanked Jesus. He had an attitude of gratitude for what it was that Christ had done for him by extending this mercy. Now Jesus, when he looked at this, he was amazed. He looked down at the man and the 12 running off in the distance, or the other 9 running off in the distance, and the 12 that were gathered around him, maybe other people watching as well. He said, wasn't it 10 that I healed? How is it that only one came back to thank me? And the one that came to thank me wasn't even a member of my own household. And I think Jesus marveled. And he looked at the man that was at his feet. And he looked down to him. And he said, sir, get up. Your faith has made you whole. Now there's an interesting thing there. An interesting turn of events. You see, he was healed before Jesus told him that he was saved or made whole. Which is a very interesting play there in those words. But I want to suggest to you that there were really 2 destinies that happened in that encounter with God that day. Yes, it's true that there were 10 people that were healed of leprosy. And the 9, when they got healed, they went back to their families. They went back to their ways of life. They went back to the things that made them happy, that pleased them, that was the normalcy of life. In other words, after they had been touched by and extended the mercy of God, they forgot about the one that healed them, the one that extended mercy, and they went back to their normal, everyday lives being completely healed. Now, God wanted to heal them. Jesus wanted to heal them. But I guess the rub is in them. They never stopped long enough to reflect on the fact that it was the mercy of God that was found in the person of Jesus Christ that healed them. It was true, but that wasn't their focus. This man, who would have been an outcast in their society, realized that his destiny didn't lie with the masses, didn't even lie with his family. It didn't lie in even going forward with what his life used to be before his encounter with Jesus. That day, he turned himself around. He had a change of mind. He said, all I know is that before I met Jesus, before this extension of ministry, of mercy, that what I found was my life was one of misery. Now, why would I want to go back to that when I can have this? And he came and he sat at the feet of Jesus and worshiped Jesus and presented to Jesus an attitude of gratitude, of thanksgiving. Jesus looked down at him and said, "Sir, rise up, go. You see, your faith in me, your recognition of me, your turning towards me has healed you. It's saved you. It hasn't just saved your flesh on your body. It saved the very essence and soul of who you are." Out of the 10 that went, one recognized and gave thanks to the mercy of God that was shown through Jesus Christ. I guess today, the thing that we probably have to learn, and probably the story behind the story for us is do we sometimes not even recognize that God extends his mercy to us every day? Do we find that when he extends his mercy and grace, when he meets our needs, when he cares for us, even in the midst of our sickness, our pain, and our fear, in all those different things? Do we find ourselves sometimes getting so busy in life because we expect that, or we take advantage of that, or we're not even aware of that we miss the greater thing? And the greater thing is returning with an attitude of thankfulness to God. And in that attitude of thankfulness, we find God restore us at a deeper level, at a more profound level. Not just the level of our flesh, but the level of our spirit, the touching of our soul. I want to suggest to you that day, there were 9 people that missed it. They went right back into their busy world, but there was one man that was changed forever. You know how he was changed? He was converted. He was saved. His life no longer was his own, and he no longer desired to spend it the way he used to spend it. He desired to spend his life at the feet of Jesus and with an attitude of thankfulness for all that God had done. You see, when we say yes to being thankful to God, when we are thankful to God, there's something that saves us. It takes away the darkness of our mind. It takes away the negative thoughts and the fear. We somehow transcend out of this normal life that we live to see a God behind it that loves us and cares for us and has our best in mind. Today I'm asking you, as a Christian, as a member of the Father's house, or wherever it is that you're watching, in your front room, wherever it is that you're watching, I'm inviting you, and I think that God is inviting you to come and to sit at the feet of Jesus and to thank him for the mercy he's extended to you. If you find yourself in need of mercy today, I want to tell you something. Ask God for mercy and he will extend it, because that's the kind of God he is. Thank you for being with us today. I hope today you'll figure out a way to comply and love Jesus, to have a thankful heart, and to say yes to everything he has for you. Have a great day.